Hello and welcome to the Shacknews Chattycast, the podcast that gets up at 5 a.m. every day to throw things into your yard. I'm one of your hosts, Steve Watts.
I never said what things. I'm your other host, Brian Carr. And Steve, as always, today's Chattycast brought to you by take a guess.
Coca-Cola. wait, Pepsi Cola.
We are a Pepsi podcast. No, but they're not bringing it to you either. It's brought to you by audible.com. Get your free audiobook and a 30-day free trial to check out other audiobooks at audibletrial.com/chattycast.
It's the voice of a generation. So with us today.
And also apparently really good at breaking up police barricades around protests.
Yeah, you just get
Except not actually good at that, as we've also discovered in real life.
So with us this week, David Craddock, our sort of semi-usual third chair, I'm going to say. You've slotted into that position now. How you doing, David?
I'm doing pretty well. I am growing part of Generation X because of the Pepsi commercials. I guess I thought they were speaking to me. And then I come to find out I'm a millennial. And so suddenly I just gave up and started tweeting.
So you're a millennial.
I was going to say,
I think Brian was about to launch into his rant about this.
Thank you.
I mean, there appears to be kind of a margin of error there. I don't know.
Us older millennials are not like the younger ones.
No, and I saw an article. Right. I saw an article talking about saying that there are old millennials and young millennials, and I don't like that delineation. Not because I'm like vain about my age, but just because I think it's a really clunky name, and that's why I say that if you were born in the mid '80s. You were alive to see, like early to mid 80s, you were alive to see Will Smith become the biggest star in the world.
Yes.
That's why we are Willennials.
Willennials, yeah. Willennials. That's what we're going with.
The dude was doing TV, he was doing movies, he was doing music. Nobody could touch him.
An entire generation born and raised in West Philadelphia.
Yes, exactly. Willennials.
So if this show seems particularly off the rails and weird so far, that's a feature, not a bug. This week we're going to be having kind of a looser show. It's a newsy bits show. We're going to be wrapping up some news from the past week, actually from the past couple of days, because when I was sort of trolling for news, I was like, oh, wow, a lot of stuff has happened that I can sort of gather from the last couple of days. But before we get to that stuff, we're going to talk about what we are playing now. And David, I want to go to you first because I know that you want to talk a bit about a thing that we are now allowed to talk about, which is Quake Champions.
Yes, been playing off and on. When the beta first started, for the first 2 weekends, I was one of a select few, a chosen few, who couldn't get past the loading screen.
I mean, it was weird. Let's just say off the bat, it's weird how the NeoGAFs of the world and the Chatties of the world have been able to talk about this game just fine because they're forumers, but us in the media, we were also in the beta, and they're like, you can't talk about it until this date.
So, we've been on Bethesda's list since last year, when we weren't allowed to talk about Doom until I think reviews didn't go up until the day of, but thing that the last thing I needed in my life was another game launcher, but here we are. I'm using Bethesda.net to play Quake Champions. And it's pretty rickety. I'm having PTSD to Steam circa 2004 and 5.
Oh man,
yeah. When I think some outlets actually docked points from Half-Life 2 because you could only play it on Steam. But no, Quake Champions is a lot of fun. But it's so Asif and I got together for a chat, and we posted a preview piece on Shacknews. It's up now, and the one thing we found, we both felt right away. It was that this is a game very much targeted at us. Both of us grew up playing Quake. I think it came out when I was a freshman in high school. I've followed the series ever since. You're not going to be able to buy any mice or video cards with my name on them, like Jonathan Fatality Wendell, but I do love Mason Quake. I guess that's like the double-edged sword for me. This is very much Quake, but it's not at all accommodating to new players, the Halo and Overwatch players of today. So I guess before I get into the nitty-gritty, the high-level view is if you like Quake or Quake Live or really Quake 3 or Quake Live, you'll like this game. If you didn't, they haven't really
fans
done
of the series.
Fans of the series. But those specifically, because Quake Champions is it's a multiplayer-focused game. Mm-hmm. The campaign, like Quake 3. And I mean, it feels like Quake. It's very fast. It's very smooth. You will use a lot of rockets and railgun ammunition, and it's a heck of a lot of fun. But I guess that's my big thing right now. I've kind of felt a couple of ways. As I'm having fun, I'm wondering, because like I've been able to play this for a long time now. Do I need more of it? What sort of audience will keep this game sustainable? Because if you go on Quake Live now, you will die horribly because the hardest of the hardcore are the only ones still playing.
Yeah.
And this Quake Champions is very much a successor to that. The big difference, of course, is you have champions who are, different heroes with variable max health and movement.
And I mean, the comparison that you keep hearing, the comparison that you keep hearing when it comes to the champions is like, oh, they Overwatched it, like
yes.
like
they Battleborn did,
or Battleborn. Yeah, let's use that as our benchmark for comparison.
Because that made sense. But I mean, and this time it is more of an apples to like Granny Smith to Red Delicious comparison, I guess, because those comparisons are going to be obvious, and that's why I ask, like, what is the audience for this game? Because Blizzard's thing, make your games very accessible, but you have hooks a few layers in that keep the hardcore players interested. Mm-hmm. Quake is only the hooks, and they're very rusty, and you will either like them in your cheeks or you just won't. I am loving it. Asif is loving it. We have some issues, but it's
that was a word picture that you painted there.
I feel like Rusty Hooks is very much in line with the Quake aesthetic. Like when I think of Quake, I think of Rusty Hooks.
Yeah, it was a good choice of words, and that's a point that you made in your. I sort of led us there by accident, but that was a point that you made in your chat with Asif that was like, Blizzard games are Overwatch is very accessible, and that's sort of the thing that like got it so much critical praise is like anyone can play it and it gives you good feedback. And it sounds like this is not that.
There are no training wheels. You either know how to play Quake or you don't, and that's why Asif had the idea of intelligent matchmaking, implement an unranked mode, because right now when you play, if you care about your position, your rank at all, and you're new to this, or like me, you haven't really played Quake seriously since the early aughts, you're gonna get steamrolled, and that can be frustrating and off-putting. And so I've also been kind of juxtaposing it against Doom, like the really fresh campaign that was this perfect blend of classic Doom, some new tropes, and also some with twists. But then the multiplayer was just kind of bland. And I'm thinking, what, Quake Champions, they should just package it as the multiplayer option of Doom. Like, this would work against it. But that's really what it is. Like, it is the throwback. Like, Doom was missing classic deathmatch. That is what Quake is and was and always has been.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very good. I don't want to sound like I'm down on it. I'm not. But I'm liking it. But I'm really curious about how sustainable it will be and the audience that will gravitate to it.
Yeah, and speaking of Bethesda doing this, like, this is becoming a pattern. Like them taking a thing that works and then like adding that extra layer of complexity, and they're just like, you figure it out, because that's kind of what they did with Elder Scrolls Legends, which is like not as complex as Magic, but it's like just a little bit more complex than Hearthstone, and just like a little bit harder to get into, So it sounds like Quake is very much like following in that same mold, where they're making games for the hardcore. They're catering it towards I hate that word, but they're catering towards the core gamer, the people that live this stuff. And if you get left behind, they're just like, that's fine. So.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like Asif and I talked about. It's not even core gamers; it's Quake fans. It is even more niche than the diehards. It's Quake fans specifically, because Asif posed the question, like, forget about Halo and Overwatch. What will Call of Duty players think about this? There are so many. Mm-hmm. When Quake was big, there was still the landscape of FPS games was so much more diverse, just wide-ranging. And now it's not. It's Call of Duty, Battlefield, Overwatch, and every now and then id, which is still kind of weird for me to think about, because I grew up when they were like King of the Mountain. They built the mountain.
Well, now I wonder, like, you bring that up, and now I wonder, like, what does this mean for the modern multiplayer shooter landscape? Because for a long time there was Call of Duty and everybody trying to be Call of Duty, and that was sort of the two archetypes. Like it was all of a type, and now it seems like Call of Duty and Battlefield are sort of overdoing their own thing that not that many other games are doing anymore. Not that many other games are even trying to compete with Call of Duty on its own grounds anymore. But everyone is trying to be Overwatch, or everyone is trying to be the loot-driven, accessible multiplayer shooter. You've got like Paragon and things like that.
Well, and what I've noticed,
Paladins.
Yeah, that's it.
You can get even more granular with that. You have Call of Duty and Battlefield, which are kind of on a battlefield of their own. You have the only people who can really compete with them. You have one of two ways to do it. You're either a company with a lot of cachet like Blizzard, where you can do whatever you want and know that your game will sell.
Yeah.
Or you do what id is doing with Quake Champions, and actually what Epic is doing with the new Unreal Tournament, and you go free to play, and you say, hey, if you remember this, here's more of this, and it's for you, and you don't have to pay $60.
Yeah, that's sort of the thing when I was referring to like Overwatch. It's like Overwatch is a type of character-driven arena shooter.
Yeah.
That Quake Champions is also kind of falling into that line, but also has the Quake DNA. The game from Cliff Bleszinski's studio that I'm forgetting the name of right now.
Lawbreakers.
Lawbreakers, yeah. Lawbreakers is that same kind of like, hey, this is kind of a throwback to old school, but also a modernized arena shooter sort of in this mold. So it's like we're seeing the multiplayer shooter space sort of splinter in these kind of two very divergent paths that don't have that much to do with each other.
But here's my question: is Quake Champions team-based, objective-based co-op?
They've been rolling out. The first two in the beta were deathmatch and team deathmatch. A week or two ago, they rolled out duel, which is a one-on-one deathmatch. Those are, to my knowledge, the only 3 modes so far.
So it sounds like it's primarily deathmatch focused. So it's really not. I don't know if Overwatch is the best comparison, because I feel like Overwatch is defined by the fact that
it's more objective based.
Yeah. It's hero based, but there are objectives, and you do technically have to work together as a team. You can't really lone wolf it. If you play like a deathmatch game, I hate you. Like,
right. The reality is that both of those games can exist, but the thing is you have, on the surface, you're thinking, oh, heroes and champions. Really, these are synonyms, and so they'll be compared. And Steve, you raised an interesting point. Like, we've been talking about how games like the new free-to-play Unreal Tournament and Quake Champions seem to be catering to a very specific base. That's actually, to me, been kind of endemic in that originated on, I think, Kickstarter, where you had a lot of these veteran game designers who very overtly said, hey, look, it's Wasteland 2. Hey, look, it's another point-and-click adventure. They didn't really make a lot of overtures to a new audience. They're like, if you remember this, then you'll love this. If you don't, then go play with your smartphones. But that's what it kind of feels like. I don't know that there have been a lot of overtures made in any of these genres with the resurrections of these classic IPs to cater to new audiences. And I think that could be a problem for ones like Quake Champions, which are going to live or die based on free-to-play.
I think the big takeaway I find interesting is this idea of a game that's balanced not on maps, not on weapons, but on characters. On having, like, there's maybe not necessarily a huge diversity in terms of game modes or anything, but the game will be dramatically different depending on the champions that you play as or something like that. And so, like, and this is something I've talked about with like Overwatch a little bit, right? Like, the thing that appeals to me about these hero-based shooters is that in a way they feel more like fighting games. Like, you're trying to figure out matchups, you're trying to figure out spacing, you're trying to figure out like when to use your abilities. Like, that to me is a really interesting wrinkle. And if Quake going kind of down that road in that style of game, there's a lot there, especially in like the one-on-one kind of duel space. I love the idea of first-person shooters as fighters. That's my favorite thing about the last couple years of shooters.
Yeah, but it's interesting because in Quake Champions, the heroes are they're only really distinguished by core main ability, and there are some passive abilities. But
this is actually, David, this is something that I was going to ask about, because I want to just tee this up for you real quick. When I was reading your guide, you published the guide on Shacknews.com, Shackfacts. The guide was like, know your maps, because like the rocket launcher is in this spot on this map, and everyone knows it, and you got to be the guy to get to it. The way that they differentiate classes in Overwatch, and even going back further in Team Fortress 2, is every character has their weapon. They have their signature weapon, and that is theirs, that no one else has, and that's how they differentiate them. They also have differing levels of like hit points and speed and things like that, but the weapons are really like the thing that differentiate them. And then Team Fortress 2 introduced like a bajillion weapons for every single character,
And hats.
And hats. And I lost track of them all. But like that was always the differentiating factor. So how does this work out in Quake, where yes, you have these different characters, but they can all grab a rocket launcher, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that is actually, like, you and Brian kind of led me right to this. Quake Champions, as a free play game, when you download it, you get one character who's Ranger, who is the, and I use this loosely, the main character of Quake 1.
He's the Tracer. He's
the Tracer, yes.
Turns out in a comic that he's gay.
Yep.
He's kind of your middle of the road character. He can do everything moderately well. And the idea is that you can enjoy Quake Champions without ever playing a dime. It's you and Ranger. You've got access to the same weapons of everyone else. You'll have fun. The champions really are more, to use an analogy, Overwatch is a character-driven world. Quake Champions is all about world building. It's about the world. It's about the maps and weapon placement and knowing where the power-ups are. And in fact, there are even one new thing they added to Champions is the announcer says quad damage spawns in 15 seconds. And an indicator appears on your map. Like, this is where it is. And that kind of, like,
everyone go there and kill each other.
Yes, and it's glorious. And
that sounds fun, actually. I like that.
It is a lot of fun, but it is very much, the characters don't matter as much. Again, it's surface level. The champions, they have their powers. It boils down to knowing the map and knowing the techniques, like circle strafing, all of these old school techniques that form kind of the underpinnings of Quake Champions. The characters are almost secondary.
You know what that reminds me? I mean, like, this is a weird thing to reference, but that kind of reminds me of I forget which one it was, but one of the Hunger Games books / movies. There's a scene where, like, there's a big cache of weapons in the center, and all of them are looking at it, and they know that, like, in X number of seconds, they're going to be uncaged. Yeah. And the main character, like, makes the decision, like, I'm not going to run towards that because everyone is going to, and they're all going to kill each other.
Yeah.
I'm going to run away from it. So, like, that's an interesting, like, strategic push-pull. Do you go for the big risk, big reward benefit of going for the weapon, or do you avoid it and let everyone else weaken each other? You know?
And that is where the weapon placement map knowledge also comes into play, because say all the three of us are playing, the announcer says, hey, quad damage, 15 seconds away, go get it. But if I have a railgun, I might find a nice position to snipe you two as you're going for the quad spot. Mm-hmm. And then once the dust settles, I swoop down, grab it.
Yeah, that's a cool element that, like, feels like it plays very well into Quake's, like, history.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I really like this game, but I'm a Quake fan, so I was kind of going to like it.
Yeah. Are you afraid that, like, a non-Quake fan would be like, nah?
You know what? So played it, and I don't want to put him on the spot or anything, but he said he had it was a very steep learning curve for him, because I think when Quake came out, he was like 3 years old or something, so he really didn't ride this wave.
He's one of those young millennials.
He's one of those young millennials.
He is not a millennial.
He drinks that Coke, you know. But no, he didn't really ride that wave of, Duke versus Doom, Quake versus Unreal. Like, none of that really means anything to him.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say I'm very interested to see, like, for the first few months, since it's free to play, we might just see like a swell of users on the servers, but then in a short time will it thin out like Quake Live has, so that only the dedicated are playing, and like these are the type of people who go into graphics because they want like 3,000 frames per second.
That was going to be my next question. As somebody who plays PC primarily on a laptop, and I can already hear the Shacknews community cringing when I say that, whatever. I've made my choice, and I like it. I'm wondering, like, because a big part of, like, the free-to-play model is that sort of, you know, we have to get as many people in and playing as possible. But I would say really high-end system requirements would keep that from happening. Do you think this is a game that scales well into different systems, or is that something they went out of their way to do?
I think it does. My system is a few years old. I'm running a GeForce 970, and I've got everything cranked up to max. So on the one hand, like, I actually would like to look deeper into that. I'm glad you mentioned it, because that is another throwback to id. Like, they were always the pioneers of pushing the graphical envelope, and I think that they still do that to a degree. But it's
a legacy that's still carried by Shacknews, which was a Quake fan site.
Yes, exactly. Our roots go deep. But again, the irony is the deeper you are into Quake, the lower you're going to turn down those settings. But say that I think run this, but probably, you know, you're going to want, you might have to make some cuts depending on your hardware.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'd like to check this out, but I just wonder if I'll actually be able to run it. It's all moot because my laptop's in the shop right now. I'm waiting for it to come back.
Well, you know, that's one thing Asif and I talked about. Like, okay, free to play will obviously grow the audience at first because, hey, why not? Free game, I'll try it. And you earn in-game currency called favor that lets you rent champions for 24 real-time hours, which means whether you're playing or not, the clock is ticking. And I think that is good, but there's no, this is something Asif brought up, there's no sense of permanency. Like in Rocket League, if you progress so much, you can unlock things for keeps.
Mm-hmm.
And would benefit from something like that. Like if you earn like 1 million favor, you could convert it into platinum, which is the real money currency, and then buy a hero. Or maybe they should let you unlock 2 heroes, you know, so that you feel like, okay, I'm playing, I'm putting a lot of time into this, and I'm getting something out of it. Whereas, you know, right now you might play 300 hours, but unless you spend $10, you're not going to get anything new.
Yeah, I know Asif in that preview mentioned like 24 hours just seems like such a short time. There should be an option to like do it for a week or something.
It's a short enough time that you almost have to plan your life around it. Like, okay, I've unlocked my champion. I better wait to unlock.
I gotta min-max my actual real life hours.
Yeah, like you don't want to rent a champion if you're not going to be home to play for a whole day or whatever. You know, it's 48 would be better because that's a weekend thing.
I bet rentals spike on weekends because of that, because no one's gonna rent it on like a Sunday
Tuesday,
night.
Something. Yeah, Sunday. Yeah. So I really like it, and I think it has potential, but I'm coming from the perspective of someone who's played id games, not even since Wolfenstein, but since Catacomb 3D.
Oh, geez.
So put out. But I'm really wondering, you know, for someone like Rakib, who might just download this, very discouraged because, you know, he could be matched up against anyone and immediately go, to hell with this and play something more palatable.
Yeah, I mean, that's especially a risk with free-to-play games because it's like there's no barrier to entry in the first place. Just somebody could try it and immediately be turned off, and then they feel like they've lost nothing. They have no like incentive to keep trying. They're just like, okay, fuck it.
to bring back my Doom comparison, it's hard not to compare them because Doom and Quake have always gone hand in hand, and it's just weird to me that Doom felt so self-aware. It couldn't be 1993 Doom, but it also couldn't be Call of Duty, so it found this perfect middle ground. Whereas Quake Champions is like, it's 1999. It's just, it's kind of weird.
Come at me, bro.
That's either confidence.
The Dreamcast is out. We got dial-up modems.
I played Quake 3 on PC, but I also had a Dreamcast. I bought the keyboard. I bought the mouse. I had the 56K modem going on.
We're all like, these comparisons mean nothing to the young millennials, but we're all like comparing our old timey cred. I had the AOL CDs. Let me tell you something.
My rose tint. They are bifocals, but
this is like some splashy graphics away from being like a VH1 special.
Exactly.
Let's move on to Brian. What have you been playing?
So not Quake Champions, I will say that. I've actually not been playing a lot of anything PC related for, like I said, my computer's in the shop. So I have tried, and again, like it's hard because we're right in the thick of exams and all that right now. It's been tough to really get a lot of time to play games, but I have tried to play some stuff on the Switch, which is kind of my go-to lately. And so
because everything should be on the Switch. That's like kind of our motto.
Our
motto in the
Switch.
In the Shacknews Slack is like, that should be on Switch. Like whenever anyone else any game.
Like I'm very excited. There's some good stuff coming out for Switch this month. Like I'm already looking at it and saying I'm probably going to spend more time and money on the Switch than any other platform. It's like Injustice, and then whatever things get put out as like downloadable stuff on the Switch.
You know what platform Injustice should be?
It should be on the Switch. Anyway.
Oh, I was going to say Vita. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah.
I do have the first one on Vita too. Trust me, you put it on a portable, I'll probably check it out. So I guess the two I've been playing really are some combination of Zelda and Mario Kart, as in Puyo Puyo Tetris, of course, but we talked about that a lot already. So I guess where do you want to start?
Let's talk Mario. I mean, like we've talked about Zelda.
I will say, like, I'll give you just a quick update for the book club.
The continuous book club that's going to go until November when it's Game of the Year time.
So I figured out how to get to Death Mountain. I went to Death Mountain. I met the Gorons. None of this should be spoilers because that's where the Gorons hang out, and you know that.
Yeah, it's where they always have.
Yeah. So I did that whole quest. I finished that Divine Beast, and here's the nice part: I did it all by myself. I didn't have to look it up. And I think that's because, and I felt good about that until I realized that was actually probably meant to be the easiest dungeon because it's the hardest one to get to. So then I felt kind of bad about myself.
I have a small update for the book club as long as we're doing it. I foolishly and arrogantly last week said like, oh yeah, once you're in the dungeon, it takes like maybe 30, 45 minutes and you can knock it off. I had said that based on the Zora and Rito dungeon. Then I got to that goddamn camel and I was like, what is this?
The camel one's bad.
The camel is like actively discouraging me from playing more of that game because it's so complex. Like there's so many moving bits, and it's like this is
terrible.
This is.
But
hard.
I will say the Goron one is very straightforward.
So my pride came before the fall last week.
So I got the Master Sword. I got 4 Divine Beasts down. I'll probably start working on getting to the final area soon. And then I don't know. Here's the thing. Like, this may be sacrilege, but I'm not sure I want to play any more Zelda after this. I feel like I've gotten enough out of this game.
So you're not going to play on hard mode with that DLC?
Absolutely not. I really want to know more about the story mode because there is some potential interesting story stuff they could do. I don't know like how it's going to fit in because I have not finished the game yet, but that's the kind of thing I'm interested in. But honestly, I feel like I'm going to probably be close to 70 hours in when all this is said and done. And that's a good amount of Zelda. I'm happy with that.
Solid chunk. I mean, like the DLC they announced is like those sound like very good tools for people who are still actively playing the game, and I might still be doing that by the time it comes out. Who knows?
If you're already 100+ hours in, I mean, great. Like
it's like you can start a second playthrough, and you can get these tools that make it easier.
I don't want to start a second playthrough. Like I like again, this is not to say it's a bad game. It's not. I just don't feel like.
You feel like you've had your fill. That's fine. Yeah. It's like a 70-hour game. No one's gonna blame you except maybe David shaking his head.
Yeah.
But anyway, again, Mario Kart. Let's talk about the new thing.
Let's talk about Mario Kart. New. Okay.
It is to so many people, though. It is.
Which is I'm happy because I honestly think Mario Kart 8 is the best Mario Kart.
Agreed.
But I also am kind of sad because like people are like this game is so good. I'm like, you could have known that. You would have known that 3 years ago. Like, where were you then?
Yeah. There's that.
But anyway, it holds up well. I will say I'm not very good at Mario Kart anymore. I've discovered. I can kind of get into like the top 3, top 4 relatively consistently online, but that's about it. You have these kids that are just sharks out there that are just like, I don't know how you are 3 miles ahead of me when I've been like making every turn perfectly and like drifting and doing all that stuff. What are you even
doing? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you know where all the shortcuts are and you've got it like planned out to a T. I also want to point out, thanks Amazon for getting this to me 3 days after release. That was a crackerjack operation. That was just enough time for everybody to get really good at Mario Kart.
So how are you at 200cc? Because I know that's not new. Terrible. I know they added it. I still suck at it. Yeah, I can't.
No, it's still bad. I went on the easiest track, and I'm just like, no, I can't do this. But I don't know. It's good to have. I like the new additions. It plays better. The battle mode stuff is fun. Renegades. What was it? Renegade mode?
Roundup.
Yeah, that one's fun. Even though I think that it's kind of balanced against the police a little bit. But yeah, it's a real solid game, and it's honestly, even if you already have it, it's an easy recommendation just because this is one of the few games I would say that like in terms of like I really have not been a fan of this whole thing where we're going to remaster games from the last generation to fill in gaps in our lineup.
Yeah. But it makes sense for the Wii U.
It makes sense for the Wii U because nobody played these things. So and so we were talking, sad. We were kicking these ideas around before we started the show, like before we were trying to plan the show, like, do we do something about Mario Kart? And then I'm like, well, we could do a thing where it's like, what other Wii U games would we like to see get the treatment that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe did? And it's like, well, all of them.
All of them, yes. Because again, everything should be on the Switch.
Like, give me Bayonetta 1 and 2 on there. Give me Super Mario 3D World on there. Put them all on there.
Find a way to put Mario Maker on there.
Yeah, that's like, it's obvious. And so like that'd be the shortest conversation in the world. Like, and by the way, while I'm on this, please stop with this fiction that Splatoon 2 is a port of the first game. It's not. It's new.
It's a new game.
So like if you want to do like Splatoon remastered before Splatoon 2 comes out, fine, but Splatoon 2 is its own thing.
I think that'd be stupid. I don't know why they would do that.
Don't
cannibalize their own thing.
It would be the worst idea. So everything but Splatoon, bring to the Wii U or to the Switch.
Yeah, and Splatoon 2 looks like it's everything the first one was and some more stuff. So
and that's all I wanted.
Yeah,
more stuff and an easier grind. That's it.
So we got some news events to talk about. I'll just talk about my game extremely quickly. I've been playing some Nier Automata.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's pretty Bayonetta-y combat. It's a little there's some rough edges here and there when I notice some weird textures popping in and stuff. It was also like infuriating the way that the save system worked for the first like half hour, because they kind of, this game likes to fuck with you a lot. So like when I went to
that DLC.
Yeah, that's in my list of stories. Hold on, this is the segue. So like they like to fuck with you. When I went to like check the settings to make sure that the subtitles were turned on, because I always play with subtitles on, like it's all in just gibberish, because they make changing the settings part of the plot that doesn't happen until you finish the intro mission. So like that was one thing, and then you go to the save menu and it's like play the game to learn how to save, and I'm like, what? What the hell? So I actually died on the first boss, and then it was like, okay, rebooting, and then they just started me like literally from the beginning, not even from like a checkpoint of the first boss. I just had to start the game again.
This sounds absolutely horrible.
But after that stuff, after that crazy bullshit, I actually like went into the open world area. That first intro mission was like, a bespoke area. I'm in sort of an open area where there's mission givers and things like that. And I can kind of choose when to save, and they've taught me how to save. It's like, oh, when you see these things, that's like a quick save point. It's like, okay, good. Now I know how to. Thank you, game. But it's a game that seems to like really take glee in messing with the player. And I already kind of know, since I didn't know when I was going to be able to play this game, I just kind of exposed myself to the spoiler at the end of how it messes with the player. Yeah. Which ties into this DLC story that we have,
which is also apparently a tradition in that series. I was doing some Wikipedia research into this the other night, and I don't know, that's a weird choice.
Yeah, it's apparently, I mean, skip ahead real quick because this is important context for the story we're going to talk about. Like I haven't finished it yet, but I already know the idea of the ending weirdness is that the director of the game wanted to have an element that like only the player would feel. So if you're watching a person stream it, they don't get that feeling. Only the player gets this feeling. And so he delivers that by once you get all of the endings, because there's like a bajillion of them. Once you get all the endings, the way that you like close the loop on the plot is to delete your save, like permanently forever. And and your consciousness, the way in the fiction, your consciousness is the save. So whenever she uploads her consciousness, that is a save. And so whenever you restart, it's just loading that consciousness onto another body, onto another Android body. So it's like it makes sense within the fiction, but that's how they sort of like mess with you at the end.
Here's my question: how does that work with like cloud saving? Does it delete?
I have no idea. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. Okay. I'm sure he thought. Anyway. I'm sure there's some way. Maybe it doesn't cloud save. I don't know. But I'm sure they do it in some way. At any rate, so this DLC, with that context in mind, they released it, probably a month or so after the game came out, and you can't play it if you've done that because the save is deleted. But you also can't just play it from the beginning of the game because you have to have played through it, I think, at least 3 times to get 3 of the endings so that this Coliseum thing opens up, because it's open from the same menu as the Coliseum. So like you have this weird like narrow window of opportunity of when you can play the DLC, and I'm not far enough to do it, and people who have beaten it have already like deleted their save and they can't do it. They'd have to start a new game to do it. So it's like you're definitely messing with people. So
but why?
I don't know. But it's good. It's a good game. I'm liking it. I'm enjoying it a lot. That's why it's the thing that I've been playing the most this week. But it's yeah, it's got a weird Japanesey sense of humor to it that I feel like messing with the player is kind of part of that. It sort of reminds me of Metal Gear in some ways, like with its sense of humor, and also with its just like, hey, upskirt shot for no particular reason. You know, like she's the main character is wearing like a very short skirt, and at one point there's a cutscene that I just got to where you fight this other android, and then she's like not noticing that the wind is just blowing the skirt sideways, and you're seeing her underwear, like or whatever you would call it for an android. And I'm just like, okay, guys.
But why?
Come on.
Okay, so we're getting a bit far afield here. But if she's an android, why does she need underwear?
I don't know. I mean,
society, Brian.
The male android that I had just fought, again, minor spoilers, but the male android that I had just fought was naked and he looked like a Ken doll. Like he had nothing there, you know? And they weren't shying away from like showing that region to make it clear that he had nothing there. So presumably she doesn't either. I don't know.
I don't know, man.
Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to other newsy bits. Further near automata updates coming. I'm
sure it's super fun and wonderful. But
it is fun. It's good, solid combat.
I appreciate the fact they're trying to do something different. I just don't think this is the way to do it.
And the way the combat, like, I've heard a lot of rumblings about the plot. I know the big thing at the end where you delete your save, but that doesn't really tell me much about the plot. So I've heard rumblings about how the plot is like actually really good, and as you play through multiple times, you sort of see different sides of it. And but already, like, I can tell that something is up because I've gone into the battle that I just went to that I referenced that ended with like a naked android Sephiroth. He looked like Sephiroth anyway. Okay. It's got your androids and you're fighting robots. So the robots are very mechanical looking. They look like old junker, like, and you look humanoid even though you're an android. So that's the premise of the game. But I sort of stumbled into this like robot safe haven, and there was like one of the robots was like rocking a baby carriage, and another one was like swinging on a swing, and like her partner was like, they're just imitating human speech. They don't have feelings. This is wrong. Like they're not actually feeling anything. But it was still like incredibly creepy. And I'm sure that that's leading to something of like, oh wait, yeah, they do have speech and they do have like emotions, and you've been slaughtering them by the dozens. I feel like that's probably where that's going. But who knows?
I will say this about the Nier franchise, because I guess we can call it a franchise. It's 2 games now.
Yeah, sure.
It is wild that it is itself a spin-off of another semi-obscure series. And so now we have this series that I feel like is bigger than the series it was spun off from. Because it was actually, I guess, one of the bad endings from Drakengard, or one of the Drakengard games.
Oh, weird. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. And so I'm like, this is like, I kind of appreciate that it exists on that level. Like, I mean, they do
have like weird roguelike-y elements. Like when you die, you get to choose what you're like. They have a default like this android did this, and then when someone else finds your body, they can like revive you, which gives you some credit, or they can just take your parts for themselves, which gives them some credit.
So there's an online component to it.
Yes, yeah, you just randomly see like bodies scattered sometimes, and I found my own body in spots where I fought bosses, and I've used it as like an emergency like energy tank when I was low. So yeah, it's got like cool little elements like that. That are very like roguelike, and it's like, hey, you found your own body. Do you want to just restore the chips that you had equipped at that time? And you can say yes.
Sure.
Yeah, so anyway, let's move on to some other news. We've got like 20 minutes to hit some newsy bits here. Let's see. This one is not. I don't know how much discussion there is for this, but I really liked the piece, so I wanted to highlight it. John Kiefer did a piece this week on a museum, I think it's in Texas, that's doing a gaming memorabilia exhibit, and part of that was to have this Doom memorabilia brought, including like maps that have apparently never been seen outside of id, and it just looked like it looked like what I would draw when I was that age, you know, like playing Doom or Quake. It was just funny saying like the thing could have been drawn on a napkin. And David, you had just gotten finished writing like a novella on Doom, so this kind of like played very nicely into your own research.
Yeah, I found it very interesting, and John Romero is really big into that. He's donated, I think he donated to a museum, along with some punch cards from his first game programs. And so I really like that. Like, this is just another step in the right direction to further solidify games as, you know, a cornerstone of our pop culture. And to be able to walk into a museum and see gaming, you know, design documents and map sketches and things of that nature is just really cool.
Mm-hmm. And archival things too, because it's like when people started getting serious about archiving books, it's like, okay, we need to figure out a way to preserve paper better, you know?
Yeah.
And for a long time, preserving things like code has been a real problem for games. But the more people take it seriously and see museum pieces like this, the more that that will get people interested in figuring the technical side of it out, you know?
I think that's really cool. And I'm glad, like John, you know, Keith got some comments from John Romero. He talked to Richard Garriott, who's also really big into doing archival stuff.
When he's not going to space.
Yeah, when he's like, maybe he's sending this from space. Like, he can multitask.
We don't know.
Yeah, he's going into the future, thinking about the past. One never knows. I thought it was a really cool piece.
Yeah. So let's move on to, let's see, the Nintendo president. This was actually the second time he's made a comment similar to this. But it's interesting that he's being pretty bullish. He said the Switch is building momentum that could match the Wii, which is quite a goal. To be clear, he did not say like this thing's going to sell 100 million copies or whatever. But he basically said like their new goal for this year, they revised their fiscal year goal from 2 million to 10 million. And he said like once they hit the 10 million point, that's going to hit two really important milestones. One, that's when it starts to turn the corner on profitability, starting like probably like making up for R&D costs and things like that. The other side of it is that's when he thinks that third-party developers and publishers are really going to start getting on board, and hopefully not just shoveling things on there like they kind of did with the Wii, but hopefully like putting real effort into it. So they're trying to hit this 10 million fiscal year target. He also made a comment that signified that like they're very aware of the need to just have like a constant, steady stream of new games. And he said they've got that planned. Obviously, some of it is like things like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but still. So, what do we think of this? I know we are all Switch fans. We we joked earlier that everything should be on Switch. So, what do we think of this?
I hope so. Like, I want this thing to succeed. I think it's already a success. I think that they have gotten the Nintendo name back out there. I think it's mostly washed away the stench of the Wii U brand. And I hate to say stuff like that because I thought the Wii U was a lovely system, but there was a definite stigma around Nintendo there for a hot second. And I feel like, you know, all of the sort of hand-wringing about the expense, like the expense of the peripherals and that kind of stuff has mostly been erased. And I see just a ton of goodwill toward this thing. And as long as they keep up what they've been doing, I think that it's not entirely unreasonable to expect them to hit that. I don't think they will because I think the Wii was lightning in the bottle, and I'm not sure you can do that twice.
I don't know if they're necessarily going to get to like 100 million like they did with the Wii. But
no, but I think they will do just fine because I think that, you know, you're also probably not going to see the PlayStation 4 sell as much as the PlayStation 2. You're going to see game consoles just generally not sell as much because PC, tablet, all those things are taking more and more of that market share. But I think it's
to build on that, Brian. I think the Switch has the advantage of the PS4 and Xbox One are just kind of low-end PCs. The Switch is at least something different.
It is very much so.
And it's the successor to their 3DS in a weird way. Like I know they're saying it's not, but it is. You know, so like
if they're smart, it is.
It's got it's got advantages going for it.
Completely lost the plot. Like this needs to be it.
It's got advantages going for it, like that the 3DS and Wii U development can go to it.
Put Kid Icarus on there. I want Kid Icarus Uprising HD. Please make that happen.
I don't know why. That game was not very good. Anyway.
Okay, no, whoa. Okay, no, I cannot let that slide, sir. That is one of the best games on the 3DS.
Oh, you're so wrong. Let's move on.
How am I wrong? Is it because the controls? I'm sorry that they are not.
I mean, it is partly because of the controls. I mean, like,
the controls are like that for a reason. That, like,
if you could turn off the FMV, we're gonna have like a big split. This is gonna be like an ongoing plot. If you turn off the FMV, what do you have? It's just like the silly. I was gonna go to Brian's story next too. Anyway,
okay.
I'm sorry, are you done being wrong now?
We'll settle this off air with, I don't know, Mario Kart.
I did not know this about you. This is going to change a lot in our relationship.
Wow, I did not know you were this passionate about Kid Icarus.
It's a wonderful game.
It's okay.
Wow.
So a story that you actually brought to my attention, Brian. YouTubers say they cannot make money on Call of Duty. I looked into this after you linked me to it earlier. It's from a Kotaku source. I'm not actually using our source for this one because we didn't report on this. But basically, YouTube restricts certain types of content, saying they're not like advertiser friendly. I forget if that's the phrasing they use, but basically, like, if it's particularly violent, they're like, advertisers don't want to be featured on this, and so they restrict it. Call of Duty is Call of Duty. You know, it's got violence. It's got a Nazi zombies mode. So this is like a big problem for content streamers who make Call of Duty sort of their main thing, and it's in sort of a weird, arbitrary way where YouTube is telling you, like, hey, the people who are tuning it, the advertisers who are paying us to pay you don't want to be associated with this type of content, despite the fact that you have viewers who want to see this. It's a very strange situation.
Mm-hmm. So, and what's wild is when I first read this, I'm like, you know, the whole we won't be able to make money from streaming games thing is not the most compelling argument in the world. But when you dig into
when you read the headline, it's like tiniest violin, guys.
Yeah, but when you read the headline, there is actually a larger problem here. Like, there is something that actually is worth talking about, and that is the idea of how YouTube is sort of has the control over monetizing content or demonetizing content. And that idea that apparently if you have so-called like violent depictions of war or something like that, you can't make money on YouTube is kind of bizarre. Like, I understand their need to kind of like police the content on their platform, but I'm not sure this is the way to go about doing it. Especially when you look at how a lot of the traffic coming to your site now on YouTube is looking for things like like Let's Plays, streams, that sort of stuff. And a lot of those are, in fact, going to have violent depictions of war.
And I think the weird thing for me is that this is so targeted at YouTube, at internet culture, rather than just culture at large, because I didn't watch Deadpool in the theaters, but I am like 99% certain that Coca-Cola advertised before Deadpool, and they weren't like, no, we can't be associated with the kind of graphic violence in Deadpool, because it's like they know it's a movie. They know it's like people paid money to go watch that movie because they wanted to see it. And so, like, where is it your place to tell them, like, no, we don't want viewers of this kind of thing to buy Coke, you know? Like, why is YouTube different than a movie theater in that way?
Right.
It seems arbitrary to me.
I think this could be just kind of a growing pains phase for YouTube. YouTube is still kind of the Wild West in a lot of ways. It's almost like PCs and consoles. You know, PC went online, did digital distribution, etc. before consoles. So consoles are just kind of, they were still finding their way. I kind of think YouTube will be similar in that they just need to have a few shakeups and then see.
One hopes.
One hopes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's only getting bigger. You know. Yeah,
you would think. Speaking of internet, the internet being a Wild West, there's more development on the net neutrality front this week.
Oh boy,
there always is. But let's talk about it. So when President Trump appointed, what was his name? Ajit Pai? It's something like that.
I think it's Pai.
He was very vocally against the FCC. This is going to sound arcane, but I think I have an okay handling on it. I think the FCC in 2015 had made some net neutrality rules. Pi was very opposed to those rules and thought they should hand control of the enforcement back to the FTC, where instead of them being real rules, it's like a voluntary pledge that ISPs agree to, and then the FTC enforces it with some punishments if they break them. So he has already announced his plans to roll back the rules from 2015. A new bill up in the House this week basically makes it illegal to ever go back to the FCC being the ones controlling it, because the way the FCC did it was they classified it as a common carrier, which means it has sort of more ironclad protections than a voluntary pledge. So we're getting weakened protections for net neutrality, and then on top of that, there's a bill that's trying to make it so we can never strengthen them again. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, and again, this is something that's been on the sort of kind of Republican hit list for a while, is net neutrality. Largely, I think, due kind of a combination of not really understanding what it is, and also just kind of assuming that it's going to take power out of the hands of business.
To be fair, I don't think like most legislators understand what net neutrality is. I don't think that's like it's generally a partisan split where Democrats are generally for net neutrality and Republicans are generally against net neutrality. I think that's more based on what their constituents are telling them, because I don't think either of them have like any idea what it is. It's very much based on like, oh, a lobbyist told me this, and I was like, that sounds smart. Okay. Like
that's politicians for you. I mean, regardless of party, they don't necessarily.
So just wanted to be like fair and even-handed to the Republicans. I think it is more an age thing for them than a party thing, because I think the Democrats are probably, at least the older Democrats, probably have no idea either. But basically, if someone listening to this for some reason is unfamiliar with net neutrality, the idea is that all data is treated equally. So, for example, Comcast, the person who provides my cable, could not throttle my service when I'm trying to watch Netflix because they want me to watch Comcast instead. Net neutrality tells Comcast, hey, you can't do that. And with the FCC ruling, it was by defining it as a common carrier, which means, hey, you're a utility. You have to abide by utility standards, which means you treat everything equally. Just like water has to be treated equally when you provide water to people. So this. It seems like this is a hard one to turn back if it gets through. I don't know how high it is on the sort of the docket of current, congressional action. It was co-signed by like 10 sponsors, but some of them were like pretty big names, like Rand Paul and Ted Cruz. So who knows? It might actually end up going through sometime.
Yeah. Well, and again, like I would not be surprised if that is the case. And this is honestly, I mean, and I don't like to get too political openly. For a lot of reasons, but net neutrality is one of those issues I feel is a nonpartisan issue. I feel that it really should be, because like this is essentially, you have the people who are the actual architects of the internet, right? The people who actually put this stuff together in the first place, going out and saying, we designed this as a neutral network. It was never meant to have any sort of filtering or any sort of throttling in between the points on the network where you had users. And that was where we got all of these great apps and websites.
Yeah,
and
it encourages growth. Yeah,
exactly. And so I don't think we're going to see, I think that this is a tremendous blow to the economic and cultural development of the world, frankly. Essentially having like someone like Netflix or Comcast or some big company who has an interest come in and be able to like set this stuff down, that's going to have a huge negative impact on the consumer. You're not going to have the freedom of choice you used to.
I mean, are there people out there who don't think of the internet as a utility? I think in general, like
we think of it carriers,
of course them. But like, I think in general, like the public just thinks of it as like a resource, like any other resource. Like, oh, it's the internet.
I'm not
talking, Comcast or Time Warner's connection specifically, but just like the internet as a concept. It feels like it's just a tool, like in the same way that libraries are a tool.
Well, let's talk about the fundamental problem with having the FTC take this over. It's a communications platform. The Federal Communications Commission was designed specifically to deal with any sort of utility or platform that allows for communication. And you are essentially saying, no, it is for commerce. That is why the Federal Trade Commission has jurisdiction over it. And that is a direct and deliberate misreading of what the internet is. That's right true. On its face.
I mean, the other side, just the practical, functional side of it is when when you leave this sort of thing up to Comcast or Time Warner and places like that, those companies are not necessarily like evil or whatever, but they are looking out for their bottom line. And in in a lot of areas of the country, they are the only provider. Like there's no, if you don't treat them like a utility, basically when you define an industry as a utility, you say like, hey, even if you're the only provider, you have to like treat things fair and equally. If you're the only provider without that, then you can kind of run roughshod and do whatever you want. Because if you're the only place that's offering, high-speed internet service to, Midwest Iowa, like you can kind of do whatever. So it sort of eats itself. It sort of like circles around on itself, because this also helps them hold on to that monopoly. It helps them keep competition from gaining ground in those areas. It's a mess. It seems like this could go real wrong.
Well, I mean, so you have to understand also that the predominant way people get their broadband is not through Fios or like Google Fiber or anything like that. It's through cable. It is through the coaxial cable presented by companies like Spectrum, Comcast, Charter. And here's the thing. Legally, those companies are allowed to be monopolies, right?
Sure.
You are allowed, because of the difficulty of installing networks, to be a monopoly. And since they can also carry internet over that, that means that the predominant choice that most people have for internet service in any given area is cable. So we already have a situation in which there's not quite a real monopoly, but there's a significant lack of competition in the marketplace. This just made it worse.
Yeah. Or it will make it worse if it passes.
Yeah.
We can hope can hope that other things just like keep them too busy to worry about this dumb internet thing.
But the thing is that this is not something, I don't even think it necessarily have to go, unless they want to make it something with the force of law, it doesn't actually have to go through Congress.
Well, that's what I mean. Like the FTC, FCC rule change, like that's happening. Like there's nothing that can be done to stop that. That's just happening. But the development this week of Congress trying to get the ball rolling on a bill that would forbid them from ever changing it back, that's risky. That's
worrisome. That is honestly, and that's really short-sighted.
And presumably it could be undone by another act of Congress, but you would need like the political will to do that. And once it's done, I don't know if people are going to really be like all that up in arms about undoing
especially
it,
with everything else going on right now. There's there's political capital is a real thing, and you can only spend it so many times.
That's kind of the problem that net neutrality faced in the first place, right? Because like people like President Obama and I think actually some senators during his years too were like in support of net neutrality, but it was also like kind of low on the priority list, so nobody was really like pursuing it as a serious thing. And so now if this does pass, if this does end up being high enough on the priority list that it does pass, I feel like they could undo it, but is it really going to be at the top of the next person's priority list? So it's terrifying. It's a terrifying world. Let's do one more story.
Did you have anything to add to that, David? I feel like we kind of...
Oh, no. I am someone who I believe in it. That's really all I have to. I just wanted to listen to you guys. Steve brought up an interesting point. Asif and I talk about all this time. We live like 10 minutes from each other, and the only ISP in our area is Masslink Cable, and they're just terrible. But right between our houses, there's a billboard from Masslink Cable that's on. I didn't mean to help that. I wish I had more choices.
Well, I mean, there in a lot of markets, you do have things like AT&T, Uverse, and that sort of thing, but that's still a company that is aggressively going against net neutrality. So they will throttle. They have the potential to do that. So I honestly think this is a tremendous problem and one of the major issues facing us in a new sort of digital society. And it was inevitable, I think, as soon as you saw a change in the administration, but it doesn't make it any less problematic or worrisome. And that's about as political as I'm going to get in public. So
I guess I will say that this is kind of indirectly related to net neutrality, but I write a lot of books. Some have been published through traditional publishing channels, but I also self-publish some. And so I'm a big advocate of the apps, do your own thing. sort of mentality and approach. And I think that is because we have so many almost anything we want. For if net neutrality were to go sideways, I think that a lot of people like me would find themselves creative, and that is terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole idea of like just and like from a gaming perspective, like this could totally like, oh, we don't want to carry gaming traffic, right? We don't want like that takes up too much space on our network.
That's kind of how it connects to us.
Yeah. And so like if you are not paying attention to this, like, and you're all of a sudden wondering why your Quake Champions match is running slower than usual,
right?
I mean, to metaphor it, it's like, imagine if your water provider also owned like stock in a coffee company, and they were like, "Oh, you're going to use your water for tea? No."
Yeah.
If you're going to use your water for tea, we charge double. So or it trickles out. That sort of thing. Anyway, let's do one more quick story. We gotta let some people go here. But I don't want to end on that world-ending note. Let's talk about a happy story, or at least an incredibly confusing one. A report came out this week that there's going to be a Mario and Rabbids RPG game. This is like I don't know if I believe this, but it was reported from sources from Kotaku, and they generally, when they report something with sources, from our side at Shacknews, we don't just report willy-nilly when somebody says something, but there are certain outlets that we trust that when they report something, we're like, okay, they are generally trustworthy. We will put it up. We can't verify it ourselves, so we put it up as report : blah, blah, blah. So this place that we generally trust says this. So they are generally trustworthy. Jason Schreier, I might be pronouncing his name wrong, is generally trustworthy. So that's why we put it up. But it sounds made up. Like it sounds not only made up, it sounds like it was made up like 5 years ago. So thoughts, guys.
Yeah. I'll let you take first crack at this one because I'm trying to formulate, like, I'm not sure how to
thought that isn't just a primal scream.
So I actually didn't do more than glance at the headline. I just said, huh, and kind of moved on with life. I didn't realize
that's the correct reaction, is the thing.
Well, the thing is, I didn't realize this was going to be an RPG. Like, my gut take was, oh, a minigame collection, kind of like Rayman Rabbids, or more aptly Mario and Sonic
or whatever.
Yeah. But like for an RPG, what's that? I don't know. That's weird.
Well, here's my problems. Number one, do the Rabbids actually have any brand value?
Do they? I mean, like, I don't think they tried to make a cartoon with them a couple years back.
That's what I'm saying. It was
I don't think that went
anywhere for a bit, but I don't know if it still is. I'd have to ask my niece.
Here's the thing. I think the Rabbids came before the Minions.
Yes,
but they're like more obnoxious versions of the Minions.
Well, they're also, I forget where I saw this. So if this
and I don't even like the Minions very much.
If this was you, I apologize and thank you for putting it this way. The Rabbids are basically the Minions, but with worse marketing. Like the marketing is not as good. And I think there's some truth to that. And I don't necessarily object to the idea of this. I just don't know. I question the wisdom of it. Like, I feel like there was a point where this might have been a bigger deal, but now it kind of feels like
on the Wii. Yeah,
I mean, it's like, sort of. I think the thing that
let me give you an analogy here. So, if you're not familiar, the professional wrestling company WWE has this films division, right? And one of the things they do is they do family films, and they do these cartoon crossovers, and they can't get anything like Adventure Time. They can't get anything like, regular show or any shows that are like recent or like SpongeBob or anything that's actually got brand cachet. But they do the Flintstones,
Scooby-Doo,
the Jetsons, Scooby-Doo. And so it's like Big Show meets the Jetsons and stuff like that. This is what that is. It is something where the ship has sailed, and a brand that still has some cultural relevance is associating itself with something that doesn't have any anymore for reasons that are why?
I mean, that is what's so like bizarre and baffling about it, is that it's like Mario is like one of the hottest franchises that exists, like one of the most recognizable high value franchises, and it's teaming with, it's like such a step down. It's like this is a mean way to put it, but it's like seeing a marriage and it's like, oh wow, that's uneven, like
like, well, you really punched above your weight class.
Yeah. Or like to remove it from that problematic framing. It's like if a movie came out that was like, you know, Alec Guinness is doing a buddy comedy with Carrot Top, and you're just like, what?
Well, I was thinking,
one of these is really respectable, and the other one is not. How did that happen?
The best way I can describe it is it's a bit like if Mickey Mouse partnered with those like really like weird cartoons that okay, if Mickey Mouse partnered with Duckula, how about that?
Sure.
Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Wait, Brian. Wait about what if Mickey Mouse partnered with Square Enix characters?
See?
Whoa.
But that was one of those weird things where it actually worked out.
It did actually work.
It didn't seem like it
I
would,
don't think
but it
this
worked.
is that, Dave. I don't.
No, this is not that. No, this is not.
Yeah, I don't know.
There
Like
was
maybe
a logic between those two things. There's
also,
nothing here.
And also the thing that it is doesn't really make any. I know we've talked about this a lot. We've ranted about this a lot, but the thing that it is doesn't make any sense, because when I reference like Alec Guinness and Carrot Top, it's like that's a weird pairing, but also it's an RPG. Like that's not the natural place for either of those things.
No, I'm going to revise it. I think because Duckula is actually popular. I think it's more like if Mickey Mouse paired with Bunny and Clyde. If you don't remember Bunny and Clyde, there's a good reason, because it basically might as well not exist.
That's true. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let's wrap this thing up. Brian, I know that you have something to plug this week because I listened to it last night.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I had a new episode of the show Serious Fun. It is a show that I do that talks about the sort of like serious and academic approaches to popular culture, but is not really itself terribly serious and arguably not that fun. But that
one was fun. It was fun. I listened to it.
This week's episode was about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I had some faculty, some of my fellow faculty members from English and psychology on to talk about some different aspects of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it ended up going for it's about an hour and a half long, which is longer than I thought it was going to be.
If you want some, let me advertise it this way. If you want like a strikingly interesting insight from an anger researcher, about which Marvel character is like best at exemplifying anger, then you should listen to that podcast. And it's not the Hulk.
Yep.
That's what makes it so interesting. So anyway, there were some really cool little academic tidbits in there.
And it's on iTunes and SoundCloud, and I think it's also on whatever the Google equivalent of those things are. So just search for Serious Fun, and if you see my face going like, that's the one.
It's a nicely rendered like comic-y face. Who did that for you? Was it like a student?
Her name's Kimberly. She is one of our graphics folks and marketing for the university. It was her idea. She's like, okay, we're gonna do like a Roy Lichtenstein thing with you, and I'm like, I'm all for that. I'm all for ripping off Roy Lichtenstein because he ripped off a bunch of comics artists. So this is me sticking it to Roy Lichtenstein.
Yeah, take that.
Yeah. So it was her idea, and I signed on right away.
Nice. So David, what are you up to? Any specific things going up? I mean, I know actually what you're working on, but still.
No, I'm asleep from the Doom novella.
Yeah. Well, you have your Quake piece that just went up.
I do have the Quake piece. That's a new format that we're trying. I instead of writing like a general preview, I wanted to get together with Asif, since he and I are both old school Quakers. That's not what that word means, but I just thought it would be fun to chat about it and to try a different format. So that preview, Shack Chat Quake Champions, is live on the site now.
And we want to do, like you had mentioned to me, this is sort of spoiling it, but I want to like get feedback on this. You had mentioned like you could maybe do it as a podcast or something like that, and then transcribe something. That's a possibility. But if you want to hear actual voices having these kinds of chats in the future, and we could release them as like mini podcasts, let us know that you are interested in that sort of thing, because that will help like inform the direction of those things going forward. So generally on the site, we have a lot of Prey content going up pretty soon. As per Bethesda policy, they did not get review code until like the day before, so everyone is sort of just like scrambling, and David and I took an hour out of that scrambling to be here. But we're going to have a bunch of Prey stuff going up in the near future, guides, review in progress, all that fun stuff. Some footage if I can grab a code for one of our video guys. So keep an eye out for lots and lots of Prey stuff. That's sort of the thing of the week. And that is the show, everybody. Good job.
Yeah.
We rambled about
we survived.
Yeah.
And I apologize for any fans of Duckula that I have insulted.
I apologize. I apologize for nothing.
You owe Brian an apology. You insulted the honor of Kid Icarus on 3DS.
I like Kid Icarus.
It's too real. It's too real. It's too soon. It's too soon. I cannot talk about this right now.
Let's get out of here. So thank you for listening. For David Craddock, I'm Steve Watts.
I'm Brian Carr.
And we'll see you on Chatty.